What's going on, guys? Ted from Immersion here, and I'm back with another DM's Guild Spotlight video. This time, we're going to be talking about spells. This is over 60 spells, to be exact, 60 new elemental-themed spells. So if you're curious to see what all that's about, stay tuned. What's going on, guys? I am back. Here I am on the DM's Guild, and what we're looking at today is the Opus of Elemental Substance 60 Elemental Spells. This is from friend of the channel, DroptheDie, and JB was nice enough to send me a copy of this for my review. Granted, he sent me this in like November, and I'm just getting to it now, and I apologize for that. But as you can see, this is pay what you want. There's a suggested price, but it is pay what you want. And there are 10 ratings here, and they are all 5 stars. So that goes a long way, and it is a best copper seller here on the DM's Guild. So while it is pay what you want, I'm not going to go through every single spell. Normally when it's a pay what you want module, I go through everything because you could choose to not pay anything for it if you so desired. You could, however, go back and pay after the fact, after you've purchased something, for potentially $0. The only reason I'm not going to go through all of this is because there's 60 spells. So what is this module? It is basically what it says. A bunch of original spells from one spell, each from levels, cantrip levels, so 0 to 9, for each of the major elements. So we're talking fire, cold, lightning, thunder, acid. I think earth was also added in there as well. I could be totally wrong on that, but we will look. And I figured what I would do to keep things simple is I will give you one spell from each element. I think that makes sense. And I say that now, but I may end up being like, oh man, look at this one, I forgot. And we'll go look at 2. So, purchasing this PDF does not only puts a roster of useful spells into the hands of your DM, but also funds additional works. The more purchases, the more I can make for all of you for around the cost of a gumball for each spell. I've done everything I can ensure. So there's a lot of cool information here, but basically some background. And I would recommend that you go check out JB's other things. There are a bunch of really cool, I'm sure you guys may have seen these customized spell sheets. And then there's some magic items, and then some other adventures and things along that as well. So let's dive into it right here. So first off, we can see it looks very much like, you know, pretty much any spell does. The formatting looks good to me, no issues there. So first off, we have acid, and you'll see again cantrip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's start here. And which one was I going to choose? Oh, and I guess I should say that there are some for various classes as well. They're not for every single class, but you'll see towards the end which spells rely on which spells class list. So let's try the Snows of Porphatus. I'm going to guess is how that's pronounced. It's an 8th level spell. Casting time of a minute. Concentration spell up to 1 minute. 150-foot radius. 500-foot high cylinder of driving black snowfall springs into existence at a point you choose on a surface within range. The snowfall lasts for the duration. When the cylinder appears, each creature within its area must make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 2d8 acid damage and 2d8 cold damage, half on a successful save. The creature must also make this saving throw when it enters the spell for the first area for the first time or end its turn there. Flying creatures caught in the searing black snowstorm must succeed on a strength saving throw or be driven 30 feet towards the ground. Huge or smaller creatures fully within the area of effect have their speed halved. Now, one thing I will go out and say I think is a very big boon to this is I think, personally, you can argue with me by all means, that the damage and the effects for the spells of the given level make sense. I find it troublesome, in my opinion, with certain spells in the player's handbook, and even less so in subsequent releases, but in the player's handbook where you'd have like a 5th level spell that does 10d6 damage and that's it, or Fireball, a 3rd level spell does 8d6 damage. So you may like think of, I guess the example would be Flame Strike, right? It's a cleric spell. It's 10d8 damage, 5d6 is fire, 5d6 is radiant, and it's a big, you know, cylinder, right? A vertical cylinder But Fireball, I think, has a longer range, is a bigger overall expanse, not as high, but it does 8d6, and that is 3rd level, so you can cast it at 5th level and do the same amount of damage. There's nuances in there, but that's kind of what I mean. There are spells in the player's handbook, and even, again, a little bit in some cases in later releases, that you could cast a spell of lower level, and it would do more damage and be a better use of your spell casting to cast that at a higher level than to cast the spell of the current level, if that makes sense. So this one, you look at and you're like, well, that's only 2d8 acid damage and 2d8 cold damage. That's 4d8 damage for an 8th level spell. But it's a 150-foot radius. So that's a 300-foot diameter. Even if you cast that on somebody and they're in the middle of it, it's going to, at minimum, take them several turns to get out of that, because they have 300 feet in every direction, unless they're going to do something like use a spell like Dimension Door. It's also 500 foot high. You could use this to hit creatures in the sky, and due to the later feature in it, if they're flying, it may actually push them further to the ground, therefore keeping them in the circle even longer. So I like that. I also like that it clarifies when the cylinder appears, everybody makes the save. When they enter it, they must make the save, or when they end their turn there. That's a big issue, I'd say, of contention with a lot of DMs and players. When they read a spell and it says when they, when they enter the spell for the first time, does that mean that they have to physically walk into the spell? Which seems stupid in my mind. Like, just when it's created, it happens, and if they end their turn there, then it happens again, or start their turn there, whatever the case may be. Yeah. So, there we go. Our spell, our acid spell here, Snows of Porphatus. I assume I'm probably butchering that, but let's move down to cold damage. I do also want to say that don't glance over these cantrips, right? Because you can see here, this one does d6 damage. It's a con save, but it's a 5-foot cube, right? So that is, I guess it is just a 5-foot cube. Never mind. I was thinking 10-foot cube. But you get my point. Like, I would take a look, because some of them do damage to kind of in an area of effect. So just keep that in mind. All right, cold damage. Where is it? I really like, I guess I'll start here. I like freezing armament, right? So you bonus action, right? So that's not a bad thing. Last concentration up to a minute. The next, you basically sheathe your weapon in cold freezing energy. The next time an attack is made with this weapon or piece of ammunition, the target of that attack must make a con save. On a failed save, they take a d8 cold damage. Their speed is reduced to 0 until the end of their turn, and the spell ends. On a successful save, the creature's speed is halved, so they still get half speed, even if they pass. So they don't take the damage, but they still have reduced speed, which is a first-level bonus action spell. It can, and it's touch, so you can cast it on somebody else, and it basically is like a souped-up version of a Ray of Frost or something like that reduces their speed by a little bit. This at minimum cuts their speed in half. And it doesn't, and it's nice because it says it cuts their speed in half. Therefore, things that are like difficult terrain that have their speed again, and their speed is now quartered, right? So think about that. It's pretty cool. And then you can see also the names, pretty cool, right? Like, and silly in some cases. Zerd's Bonk of Bitter Not Warm. Was it this one here? Yeah, actually, I do want to talk about this one, Glacial Dreadful, because I like the application of it. So it's a 1 action to cast, a 30-foot range, concentration up to an hour. A continuous 20-foot long, 5-foot wide sheet of glacial ice forms on a surface within range. The block of ice clings to the surface for the duration or until the spell ends. The glacial ice is as nearly as strong as stone and can be used to bridge gaps as wide as 10 feet. This ice is considered difficult terrain. So I like the concept of using it for utility to make bridges. When the spell ends, the ice splits apart. Each creature within 5 feet of the ice must succeed a dexterity saving throw against 3d6 bludgeoning damage and 3d6 cold damage, or on a failed save, take half as much. And then you can upcast it to with 4th level. Length or width of the ice increases by 10 feet for each slot above 3rd. So I like that it doesn't upcast the damage, but it does upcast the distance that you can make it. So I think that it's pretty cool because you can concentrate on it for up to an hour. So in my mind, the main purpose of using this spell has nothing to do with the damage. It's more to do with the, using it to get across areas. Also, you can concentrate up on it for up to an hour. So you could use it to cross a gap and then wait to see when your enemies or people you're trying to prevent from getting there start crossing the bridge, and then stop concentrating on it so it splits and falls apart, which is also a pretty cool idea. All right, fire. Now, fire, there was a couple I wanted to talk about. I really like Searing Palm, which is the cantrip. So it's one action, like a cantrip is, but you make a melee spell attack. I also feel like there's not a ton of spell attacks, period, but melee spell attacks even less so. When I hit, the target takes a d12 fire damage. If the target is an object made of wood, clay, stone, or flammable material, this spell has a blackened handprint on the material, and it obviously upcasts as cantrips do by a d12 each time. I just like the idea of just like smacking somebody and searing their face. They have your hand burnt, your handprint burnt into it. I thought that was pretty neat. And I wanted to talk about the first level spell here, Cloak of Embers, because I thought this was also a pretty cool idea. So in action, 1 hour non-concentration. A retaliatory bulwark cascades around you in the form of a smoldering veil of cinders. For the duration, when a creature hits you with a melee attack, reduce the damage of the attack by 1d6. The attacker takes that same amount of fire damage. After 3 melee attacks are mitigated, the spell ends. So basically, this could potentially reduce almost all damage if you roll high enough and the damage is low enough, but 3 attacks get reduced by a d6, and that same number of reduction is dealt back to them in fire damage. And when you upcast the spell using a slot of 3rd or 4th, so nothing per second, the spell can mitigate up to 5 attacks before ending. And if you use 5th or higher, the reduction and damage also increases by a d6. So maximum 5 number of attacks, but 5th level and above, the damage you reduce and the damage dealt increases by d6. Unique stuff. I like it. Let's move on to lightning. So, where's the one that I like here for lightning? Yes. So 6th level spell here, Arc Veil. 1 action, concentration up to 10 minutes. This does require a tourmaline of at least 100 gold pieces, so you do have to have a material component. But until the spell ends, lightning crackles along your skin and gear, and you gain the following benefits. Whenever you're subjected to lightning damage, you take no damage and instead regain a number of hit points equal to half the lightning damage dealt. Creatures that move within 10 feet of you or end their turn there take a d8 lightning damage, and you can use your action to teleport to an unoccupied space within 15 feet. When you appear, any creature within 5 feet must succeed on a dexterity saving throw, taking 48 lightning damage on a failed save or half as much on a successful one. Now, I don't remember exactly, and I don't think we can see, or maybe we can, when this was put out. File was originally published on October 22nd, 2018. So this, I was going to say, because this sounds like Thunderstep, and I was going to be interested if this came out before Thunderstep, but it looks like it came out after. But probably the reason that I like this the best is I do kind of like defensive spells. I feel like there's not a ton of them that don't get used too often. But teleportation, always good. Although an action for the teleport, I get it. It makes sense because it does damage. But it does continue. So you can, excuse me, do that and then still it keeps persisting. It also has the benefit of a creature ends their move within 10 feet of you. So if you work this out, excuse me, and find a way to have yourself with a glaive, and, Polar Master Sentinel, that whole build, you could keep people out at 10 feet and continue to deal lightning damage. But my favorite part is when you're subjected to lightning damage, you take no damage and are healed for half the number of hit points dealt. And I think the best use of that, in my mind, is for an ally to hit you, right? So, like, let's say there's a bunch of enemies and you move in such a way that your ally caster can cast Lightning Bolt and hit you as one of the targets, then you get healed and everybody else gets damaged, or something like Chain Lightning, right? You're one of the targets, you get zapped, you get healed, and then it chooses the other targets. I thought that was a pretty cool concept. I like that idea. All right, so thunder damage. I forget. Which one do I like the most? Let's go with Whisper Blast. Or do we want to go with Drumfire Echo? I also do like the cantrip because you clap your hand on him and it does thunder damage. I thought that was pretty cool. All right, let's go with Whisper Blast. So, one reaction, which you take when a creature comes within 5 feet of you. A simple whisper becomes a thunderous boom, slamming into a creature that approaches you. I should say you need a bell worth 50 gold pieces. The creature must succeed on a strength saving throw or take 13d6 thunder damage and be pushed back 10 feet. A lot of damage, but it's a 6th level spell. A creature that can hear who is targeted by the spell is deafened for 1 minute. They make a Constitution saving throw at the end of each of their turns to end the deafened condition. So there you go. A reaction to knock somebody back and do a ton of damage. Yeah. I'll do Drumfire Echo too. Why not? One action, a 30-foot cube, up to a minute concentration. A non-stop barrage of thunderous crashes in a 30-foot cube for the duration. So just echoes and thunder crashes in a 30-foot cube for a minute. Creatures that enter the area or start their turn there must make a Constitution saving throw or take 8d6 thunder damage. While in the area, creatures have disadvantage on concentration checks and are deafened. The spell ends if covered in a silence spell. Lastly is Earth, and I thought that I want to read the little piece about it because it's something different. So as old as creation, Earth is an element of substance, diverse, enduring, dangerous beyond imagining. Ancient castle walls standing against the ages show the resilience of stone. The grinding sands of mile-wide storms, powerful enough to strip the flesh from bone, are proof of its temperamental fury. Mountains that stretch up to the clouds stand silent vigil, treacherous and unmoving around the entire world. Earth is arduous, collapsing, gripping, and trapping creatures that try to traverse it. As the dwarves and ancients of the world will contend, bulwarks of earth and stone are undeniable in their substance. When leveraged in battle, Earth batters and destroys through sheer force, sudden and certain, both an impenetrable shield and an unbreakable spear. So I thought that this was interesting because Earth is an element, right? And anything that you deal with the elements, Earth is always one of them. But there is no such thing as Earth damage, right? There's bludgeoning damage. But I thought it was interesting that this got its own call out here, which most people would typically rely on the base elements we already talked about: acid, fire, thunder, cold, lightning. But I thought this would become cool ones to look at. So let's take a look at Quagmire, the cantrip. You transform a 5-foot unoccupied section of dirt, stone, sand, or mud into a soft bog that gives way underfoot. Creatures that enter the area must succeed on a strength saving throw or have their speed reduced to 0 until the start of their next turn. A creature can use an action to make a perception check versus your spell save DC to discern which spaces are Quagmires. And as you get higher levels, you can make additional Quagmire spaces. Let's go with Living Boulder. I'm probably going to read through a bunch of these because I thought that they were really cool. So a 5-foot diameter sphere of rock and clay appears in an unoccupied space of your choice within 30 feet and lasts for up to 1 minute concentration. As a bonus action, you can move the sphere up to 30 feet. If you ram it into a creature, that creature must make a dex save or take 2d10 bludgeoning damage. When you move the sphere, it's basically Flaming Sphere, but it's a rock. And I thought that was cool, and it does d10s instead of d6s. Let's not do that one. Let's jump down to... Yeah, we'll get to some of the high level. I haven't done too many high-level spells, so we'll talk about these. Armor of Stone, 10 minutes. You need an emerald worth 50 gold. Arcane Force surrounds you, appearing as jagged plates of stone. You gain 60 temporary hit points. While these exist, you have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage, vulnerability to thunder damage, and your speed is reduced by 5 feet. When the temporary hit point is expended, each creature within 10 feet must make a dexterity saving throw or take 3d10 bludgeoning damage. And then for each level above, your hit points increase by 10 temporary hit points. So I like this because it's sort of like a stone skin spell, kind of, right? The resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage. But it gives you the temporary hit points in return for lowering your movement speed and giving you vulnerability to thunder damage. I think that's pretty well balanced. All right. About Aftershock. 1 foot or 1 action, self 80-foot radius around yourself. A violent tremor blasts out from you along the ground. Each creature on the ground within 80 feet of you must make a con save. On a fail save, the target takes 11d10 bludgeoning damage and is knocked prone. On a successful, they take half damage and are not knocked prone. Creatures in that area that are underground or prone make their save at disadvantage. Structures and objects on the ground are also damaged by this spell. So just like a big Aftershock. And I think that's pretty cool. Let's do the 8th and the 9th level just to round it out. Crystal Spire. 1 action, 120 feet. You need a crystal needle that's been carved, worth at least 250 gold pieces, and this is concentration for an hour. A 10-foot radius jagged crystal sprouts from the ground within 120 feet. It has 150 hit points, an AC of 18, and is immune to fire, cold, and lightning damage. As a bonus action on each of your turns, you may cause a needle-sharp branch of crystal to dart out at one creature within 30 feet of the spire. So remember, the spire, 120 feet away from you, and then from within 30 feet of that shoots the dart out. Make a ranged spell attack, which is definitely the highest level spell that I haven't read through like all of them completely, but definitely out of the pre-written ones, the highest, or in the published version, the highest spell attack, because like you stop having spell attack spells way early on in 5th edition, but this changes that. Melee spell attack, or range spell attack, sorry. On a hit, target takes 10d10 piercing damage. Again, because it's a spell attack, that can technically crit, doing potentially 20d10 piercing damage. Creature killed by the Spire is drained, granting the Spire 20 temporary hit points. The creature's corpse slowly encases in crystal unless removed from the branch that pierced it. If you concentrate on the spell for the full duration, which is an hour, the Spire becomes permanent but inactive. If the spell is cast on an existing Spire, the Spire gains 150 temporary hit points and functions normally as per the spell. If the Spire is destroyed, the spell ends and another cannot be grown from within 800 feet of the previous crystal for 1,000 years. And lastly, we have the 9th level Stone Shackles of the Merciless King. 1 action, 30-foot range, an emerald worth 200 gold pieces, which the spell consumes, but it lasts until dispelled. Heavy stone shackles appear on the legs of a creature within range. Creatures that have no legs or corporeal body are unaffected. When the shackles appear, the creature's speed is reduced by 5 feet and it cannot dash. If the creature teleports, the shackles teleport with them. The shackles have 200 hit points, are immune to non-magical damage, can't be affected or detected by spells of 4th level or higher, and has advantage on saving throws against all other spells and magical effects. Each time the shackles take damage, are targeted by a spell, or tampered with, the creature shackled by them takes 15d10 piercing damage as needle-sharp spines of stone bore into their legs. Cold, regal laughter can be heard each time the shackles deal damage to the impeded creature. Creatures who attempt to cut their legs away to free themselves find the missing limbs cannot be restored by anything short of a wish spell. Talk about a brutal, awesome spell with cool flavor pieces like the laughter, the teleporting with them, and the fact that their legs can't be regrown with anything short of a wish. I mean, it's a 9th level spell. That's the kind of stuff it should do. I love it. It's nasty. It'd be great to use against your players, or to show, just like, maybe not even use it against your players, but just showcase that this kind of magic exists in your world. And lastly, I wanted to talk about the spell lists. So we can see here, certain spells are exclusive. So we can see here on the Bard spell list, they have, and there's actually a little bit here from JB about the kind of design of who got what spells. So you can see that Thunder Cannon and Raucous Blast are Bard exclusive. Druid has no Druid exclusive spells, but has a large variety. Sorcerer has a large variety as well, but they also have Blackwind's Sonorous Singularity is an exclusive sorcerer spell. Warlock has a bunch and also some exclusives in Blossoms of Cathrish, Snows of Porphatus, and Summits of Colothis. And then the Wizard has Corroding Crown, Zerd the Arcane's Bonk of Bitter Not Warm as their exclusives. And then I like to say that he also did put in a little bit here about the design and how to come up with the spells and the kind of thought process there. So I really like this, and if you know anything about me when it comes to 5th edition, and this is, I can't tell you why. I don't have a good reason why. The thing that I like to mess with the least when it comes to homebrewing, I will homebrew magic items, races, monsters, classes even, you name it. but for whatever reason, I will not do spells. I don't know what it is. I have no good reason why, but homebrewing spells in 5th edition is something that I just don't do. I don't like to add them into my game. I'm not really sure why. I have, like I said, I have no idea or good reason, like where I ran into a overpowered spell. But I like a lot of these spells, so there's the potential that something like this could appear in one of my games. And the way I would likely do it, and obviously you can do it however you want. You could just add these in and say, hey, these are also spells you can take as these listed classes. The way I like to do stuff with unique homebrew spells is whether it be a cool magic item that grants it, a story-based reward that grants it, something like that. So in my homebrew campaign, I have a character very themed around cold, and I had a character very themed around fire. So I thought it would be kind of cool to give them these spells in, whether it be like they leveled up or they did something important for their character, and this becomes a thing that they can now have access to on their spell list. But you guys can obviously do what you want, but it's a cool thing to kind of make that magic item or something a little bit more unique than just giving them access to something in the player's handbook or Xanathar's. So again, if you want to pick up Opus of Elemental Substance, I'll have a link in the description below if you'd like to go pick up a copy for yourself. And again, if you guys out there are doing and creating your own DM's Guild products, or you've seen something that you're curious about that you'd like to see me review, reach out to me, whether it's here on YouTube or some other social media, or just at nerdimmersion@gmail.com, and I'll add it to the list. I've got a bunch more reviews coming out soon, so stay tuned to the channel.